let's get this started. This is great to see these networking events. I always feel bad interrupting all these great conversations that are going on around the room to bring up their panelists, but I think we have a tremendous group of panelists here today, and I do want to give them a chance to kind of reflect on some aspects of the ecosystem. So again, the idea behind tonight was to take a number of technology companies that have been successful, that have prospered in the tech valley, and really see what are some of the fundamental enablers that help them along the way. And so I'm very happy to welcome a great group here. We also have something that's new that we're trying. We're going to have, at the end of this, David Brickman is an Albany lawyer, and he's got a new product called Rocket Docket that he's going to come up and talk about. So we're going to use this as an opportunity for other entrepreneurs to demo a new product that they may have, to get that first customer, that first early adopter, or maybe a team member. So that's one of the many things that we want to do here at Startup Tech Valley. So first off, I'd like to start off by introducing James Spencer. Come on up, James. If you've been following some of the changes in the RPI ecosystem, RPI specifically, related to entrepreneurship, James is behind a lot of it. He is really a visionary coming to us from the University of Central Florida, but he's been at RPI now for almost a year and a half now, and really making inroads at the highest level to make entrepreneurship a priority, which is something that we really want to see. We also have Matt Ammerman from Aprenda. Matt received his BA in English from SUNY Albany in 2001. I was hearing the story of just how Matt had met his other two co-founders, and I'll leave it to him, but it's nice to see these mixing between University of Albany and RPI grads who are also the other co-founders of Aprenda. And Antonio Civitelli is the chairman and CEO of Transmedia. TransFinder, I'm sorry, TransFinder. He holds a BS in computer science from Siena, and class of 2091, or class of 1991. I'm sorry, you don't outsource this to interns right before. Now I'm learning that. We finally, and that's finally Richard Jones is the CTO of Commerce Hub. Co-founder of Commerce Hub, and Richard is probably the only CTO in the Capital District who could tap dance blindfolding, as he did it in a very recent musical up in Saratoga. So very talented in many dimensions. So I'm going to turn it over to James to moderate the panel. And
all right, thanks, Jason. Hi, everyone. So here we are, Brown's Brewery. Eating good food, drinking good brew. Hopefully, is everyone enjoying themselves so far? Making connections, right? The ecosystem, what exactly is it, right? And so we've been efforting over the last several months to define what this ecosystem looks like. It involves people, it involves resources, programs, right? But at the end of the day, what makes the ecosystem work, just like any biological ecosystem, it's not the dirt and the sun and the rain and all the other natural environment elements. It's the people, it's the life, right? So all of you here today are part of this new process of how do we re-engage and connect? And here we have 3 successful companies, and we're gonna let them talk to us today about what they have done to become successful. And so this idea of tracking the success of companies, right, we wanna learn from them. And as we learn and get some of the insights of things that they've seen along their journey, then hopefully we'll get some insights about what we're trying to accomplish. And as we see this ecosystem with new people, with new ideas, with success stories, they're going to be our role models for the future. So let's let them guys sit down and get started, and we'll have a conversation about what it takes to be successful as a technological entrepreneur in the Capital Region. And I have to just tell you guys, I've only been here for about a year and a half, and what really excites me about the Capital Region is that there's this latent potential. I saw it on campus at Rensselaer. I know it exists on other campuses throughout the region, but the companies, the businesses that are here, there is something that if we just figure out how to better connect with each other, that we'll be able to do some pretty amazing things. And so, to me, the value part of the ecosystem is what these gentlemen bring to it. So, Tony, right? Tony, tell us a little about your background and kind of what got you started in business.
Well, one of my ways. Thank you, James, and thank you for the opportunity for tonight. It's interesting you're saying that 25 years ago, just about, what made you want to go into business? Well, the number one thing is you have to have some sort of a drive. During college, and with my background, my family didn't really have a lot of money, so we always thought that technology is one way to really change your position in life, and really can. If you look at all over the world, and really in this country, technology is really the new wealth in this world. Let's face it, it really is. I mean, Twitter from just a couple weeks ago, it's changing the wealth. So, but I was always a science person, and I was always that geek, that I always tell people, don't forget, I'm that pocket protector guy. That's me. And really what happened during college, and it was at Siena College locally here, I had an opportunity to really find some jobs that would pay me for my programming skills. Can you imagine that? Someone's gonna pay me while I'm doing that. And so really it's what started. It's something I had a passion to be a software engineer and really apply my ideas someplace outside college, because I love college, but there's something about applying what I just learned someplace in the world. And I was fortunate. I did this as a sophomore year. I found a good company in Schenectady, and finally became an intern in my senior year. And then about 10 years later, I actually ended up buying a company. So that's really my story.
Okay. And so passion was a big part of that journey. And how did the technology tie in with what you were passionate about? Was there something specific that you saw that motivated you? Well,
the technology at that time, it was late 80s, and PCs were just coming into market. It was something new, and as a scientist, really want to be part of something new. They don't want to talk about yesterday's technology. We always want to work in the most innovative technology. For example, today it's all about mobile. If you're not working in mobile, you're really thinking about you're going to be a dinosaur real fast. So in the late 80s, everyone was talking about there's a new thing called Microsoft DOS, right? And that was this new thing, really was, and I want to be part of it. Everyone was talking about VAX and the mainframes, but guess what? I want to do something different. And that's really what got me involved into work in innovation, not just what everyone's doing, do something brand new. And my passion was, let me work with a company that's doing something that's very new using PC. I didn't even know what they were doing. Of course, they were working with some mapping, and of course, now it's our core functionality of what we do.
So just tell us about your business right now. What is it that your business does?
Well, our business really has evolved in 25 years. You can imagine we evolved tremendously. We started initially with mapping out home care. It was a mapping system, so to really find out and it's really funny that after 25 years, we really see a market coming around again. And the way it started is that, how can you map your patients, and you have employees, these certified nurses and so forth, that actually would travel to your home to deliver services. This is 25 years ago. We thought there's going to be a huge market. The hospital's going to want to get patients home, because they're going to run out of space, or they can't afford this. So this is 25 years ago. We thought, let's figure out a way to manage a GIS system, Geographic Information System, to really manage where patients live. Let's get the employees or the nurses and all different people that work in this home care agencies, figure out how to get them to their home the most efficient, safest, and of course, match the right people. So we started with that technology. That didn't work very well, because there were a lot of other issues other than just let's make that problem solved. The issues were, can we get the insurance companies to pay for these things? We realized there's an insurance company issue back 25 years ago. It's funny how 25 years later, not too much has changed there. Hopefully it's going to change soon. But then we realized, well, how can we apply this technology in schools? And so we really took that type of technology, we applied it to school districts, that let's map out students. So at this point, we really know we have about 1,500 school districts that we work with in the United States and in Canada, which is about 20 million students every single day. So we know everything about these kids. We know, talk about the ecosystem. We really need to know about where they live, what are the parents, what are their grades. There's actually a lot more information that we need to understand about education. So obviously we did strong products to bring them to school, using bus routes and so forth, most efficient. But we realized that there's such a huge part in education. And personally, when I talk about passion, that's really what made me somewhat successful. Is that through education. So that's a passion of mine. How can I help really the K-12 part of this country that we're not number one? We're not. We're maybe at best number 20 in the world, which is embarrassing. Well, how can we actually, at this point, we've been working with these customers so many years, how can we actually help educate them? So there's just so many aspects that we started from mapping the kids, now we want to be in the classroom. And eventually, we want to get this country to be at least top 10 in my lifetime.
Okay. Thank you. What I want to do is I'm going to come back to you in a minute, but I wanted to talk a little bit about new technology. Now, Apprenda has a technology that's not a consumer technology, and it kind of requires a different set of resources. So why don't you know, Matt, if you could talk to us a little bit about what is it Apprenda does, and kind of where does it fit in the ecosystem with respect to the types of employees that you have, the types of markets that you serve, and kind of tell us a bit about your business model.
Sure. So who knows what cloud computing is? Who thinks they know what cloud computing is, right? We all have iPhones, we all have apps on our phones, whatever, and that's consumer-facing cloud computing. What Apprenda is a private platform as a service company. So we license technology to large enterprises like the Fortune 100, the banks, the healthcare providers, and they still want the benefits of cloud computing, but they can't go take their applications and deploy them into the same cloud that you and I use on our iPhones. It's just not going to be possible for them for security reasons, regulation, policy, those types of things. So what Apprenda's software is in fact a layer of software that they take and install in their own data centers to build a cloud. They actually, in the end up with what is essentially a cloud platform for their developers to build internal applications. It's actually quite interesting. Our CEO wrote a blog post I think it was just published yesterday, about the difference between a rock star developer and an enterprise developer. And there is in fact a difference. And so you think about these applications that we use on our iPhones, and we think about how they change our world as people every single day. Well, there needs to be the types of developers that change the way that businesses conduct business on a daily basis, right? So you think of a manufacturing company that is exploring new lines of business through software, right? We think of somebody like Nike, who has traditionally made shoes, and is now, you can't buy a pair of shoes that don't have a chip that talks to your phone that tells you how much you walked today. So these are companies that are in fact transforming our lives, but more importantly, transforming their businesses. Along with that blog post is in fact is actually a cartoon of two folks meeting on a plane, and on one of the developers, he's got like a little Ruby shirt on, and I don't want to upset anybody in this room with this, but he's got a little Ruby shirt on, and he says, I wrote that app that you're using on your phone, and the developer, the guy sitting on the left says, well, I wrote the software that's keeping this plane in the air. And there is fundamentally a difference there. There's two different types of developers, and we cater to the second type. Our software is for the application developer that works in a large company who wants to build innovative software for that company, but can sometimes get mired down in the politics and the process that they have to go through to get applications deployed in an enterprise data center. So our goal as a company is to flatten that, is to make it so that the experience for them is the same for the type of developer who is doing innovative things in the consumer space. What that means, though, from a staffing perspective on our side, is that we kind of need to have those same like-minded developers on our staff. They need to kind of understand who it is that they're building this software for, our platform. And to do that, they kind of have to be in the same, have the same mentality themselves. So we look for very proven, smart types of software developers, not necessarily the ones that are have done the most innovative things, but have been the most consistent in what they've done.
I'm going to come back. We're going to come back and have some other questions I'm going to ask both of you. But before then, so Richard, Commerce Hub, right? It's your company. And like this emphasis now, even in the Lolly School at Rensselaer, there's a big emphasis on supply chain management. Like this, moving goods and services around the world is kind of a big deal. Tell us a little about what your company does in that space. And again, going back to the kinds of people that are involved, because I guess the theme of today, and this is kind of something I just kind of come here to kind of talk about, is the ecosystem. We have our experiences, but what we want to do is hopefully we can have an ongoing conversation about how we can create more opportunities for each other and for the region. And so as we identify, as we share our stories with the group here, be thinking, what's the impact of what we're doing to the local community? Both in terms of the people that we hire, the types of services that we offer, and then how can we take this community and elevate it beyond just this region? What can we do to become a real global force, right? And so we're conspiring here, all of us together today, to begin this process. So I want you to tell everybody about your company and about what that means in terms of your business.
Hello. So Richard Jones, I'm the co-founder and CTO of Commerce Hub. Commerce Hub is probably one of the most important companies in the retail space that you've never heard of. In fact, if you've gone online to a company like Home Depot, Walmart, Target, Sears, Costco, JCPenney's, Staples, Walgreens, and about 30 others, the odds are that your order was placed and actually was transacted through our system. So imagine you go to Sears and you want to buy a Coleman lantern. Sears actually will send that order to us, and Sears doesn't stock Coleman lanterns. Sears has a relationship with a third-party supplier, it might actually be Coleman themselves, who takes a branded packing slips that has the Sears logo on it with all your order information. We send it down to them, and they'll fulfill that order to you. All the tracking information comes back around, and you say, oh, I got my Sears order. And what happened was actually that product was drop shipped to you. So what we do is for about 40 major retail drop shippers, we enable them to do drop ship fulfillment across about 20 million products over about 7,000 of these drop ship suppliers. And it's completely transparent to you, the consumer, and it's really one of the biggest trends in online retail fulfillment that is going on today. And all sorts of things are going on in retail that would probably surprise most people. I mean, if people here are avid Amazon shoppers, they know about maybe the marketplace and how third-party sellers are coming into the mix. Amazon does some drop shipping as well, but all of these retailers, even Staples.com, who sort of fancies themselves as as sort of an office supply business company, they want to sell everything to businesses. They want to sell ashtrays, and they want to sell carpet, and they want to sell furniture. And so it's all about online now. It's about assortment expansion. So you have somebody like Home Depot that if you walk into their store, they've got 30,000 SKUs, stock keeping units. So it's like a unique product. Online, they've got about 200,000 SKUs, and a lot of that is thanks to us. They want to be at 2 million SKUs because Amazon is at 100 million SKUs and Sears is at 15 million SKUs. So retail as we know it, because of online, is changing in vastly fundamental ways and won't look in another 10 years anything like it looked 10 years ago. So Commerce Hub is really at the middle of that, being a very unique company. We really have, there's no other entity like us in the marketplace that does what we do, that has the relationships with the companies that we do, and we are really poised to do some very interesting things. We've been in the local area since 1997. We've been quite involved with Tech Connects and the software network and all sorts of things like this. We've had over the years a very proactive internship program, and we're constantly hiring. We'll probably break 200 heads this year just on our hiring front. And again, it's one of those things where in the early days we were looking for VC money, and guys like Bill Gurley from Benchmark Capital, who put all the early money into Amazon, was a typical example. He'd say, yeah, I like you, but I don't want to go to Albany, New York, 4 times a year for a board meeting. And there was this sense of like, where are you guys? You're sort of in the boonies. And in a way we were in the boonies because, there wasn't a lot of venture capital funding around here at the time. But in another way, it sort of helped us because we weren't competing with Google and we weren't competing with Amazon and these big companies for talent. And we had a lot of great local educational institutions, RPI, SUNY, Siena, St. Rose, where we were drawing a lot of talent from. And I think in the end, obviously, it's worked out very well. We're a profitable, established company. We are growing at a very impressive rate, and we're hiring and continue to hire. We'll hire more people this year than we probably hired in the first 6 years of our existence. So, just from a being in the ecosystem perspective, I think that in the end, on the aggregate, it has absolutely benefited Commerce Hub to be in this area. And a lot of it is because of these kinds of gatherings and this kind of an effort to, make this fertile ground for these kind of companies.
Okay, excellent, thank you. What I want to do now, that we kind of got a sense of what each of your companies does in the markets that you serve. One thing I found is when you're in business and you're working in a certain market, you're able to see trends that other people don't see because they don't deal with your suppliers, they don't deal with the hiring market. If you go take a minute and think about for each one of you, what are some of the things that you've noticed or that you're observing or that you're sensing as you watch your progression through the market, as you've seen your growth? What are some of the things that you can see about this area, positive or negative trends that you think are impacting the way we do business? If you could kind of give us your insights on that, it's for each of you. Who wants to go first? Okay, all right.
So we've been in business 6 years, maybe 7 now. And we've had to pivot at times. We're a foundational technology. We as a platform, our market is other software developers. So as they do this, we've got to react. And if I go back all to the beginning, at the beginning of the 6 years, the company started as a software as a service application, probably more similar to these two companies. We actually started the company, 3 guys in a room that was made out of brick that had no windows and no air conditioning and no bathroom, obviously.
I remember that.
And and we started the company to build an application, piece of software that we were going to run, and it was going to change the way a particular market did business. And we spent 6 months, the first 6 months, nights, weekends, whenever we could in that office. And then after that 6 months, we looked at our business plan, we looked at all of the documentation we had written, and we said, well, if we've got to do this, then anybody else who wants to build this type of software is going to have to do the same thing. So we pivoted at that point. We said, you know what, we're going to become the foundational software instead. We're going to become the platform everybody's going to build this on top of. So we did that for a little while, and we started to build out the platform. And our business plan then morphed into, we are going to be the platform, the one instance of the platform, and we're going to host it, and we're going to become the next Amazon Web Services or something like that, that is going to be the platform everybody's going to go to online. And as we went through rounds of funding, and as we worked with our advisors, and as we did experiments in the market, we realized, these enterprises, these big companies are coming to us and saying, we like what you're doing, but we need it for ourselves. And that's when we pivoted again, and we pivoted to start selling the software as licensable software. So now we're selling multi-million-dollar contracts to large financial institutions, and they're actually taking our software and doing what we were going to do 3 or 4 years ago. So the ability to pivot and the ability to change what your model is and still not run out of money and still not run out of staffing and still keep people interested in what you're doing and have staff and developers and all the other things that you need as a company to be excited about what you're doing is really important. I think where this area helped us the most was actually, and going back to kind of one of the truisms about entrepreneurship, every entrepreneur up here and anybody who's an entrepreneur here tonight understands, and it's always in the back of your mind, that there's always the potential for failure. And that goes for when you start a company, and that goes for every time you pivot. You could be making the wrong pivot. And you have to be in an area that is conducive to not necessarily being a safety net, but to providing the mechanisms by which you can bounce back from a wrong move. And I think this area was actually very, very friendly to us in that sense. I'm not saying that we made necessarily the wrong moves at any given time, but you have to experiment a lot, especially when, in our case, it's a market that even just now is actually catching up to us. And so we were quite early 2, 3, 4 years ago. And so being able to take the capital that we were able to raise, stretch it out over several years, and have staff that, you know, our fourth employee, our fifth employee, they're still with us. Having those types of people in this area and having their living standard be good enough that they're willing to take that risk with us was, I mean, it's been instrumental in being able to basically have the steady growth that we've had. And now, you know, now we're at that hockey stick moment where we just crossed over. We're a little bit smaller than maybe these two guys, but we just crossed over the 50 employee mark. But our target for the next 6 months is to double that. So we're at that hockey stick moment where we're hiring like crazy and our company is growing, and that's all due to now new revenue coming in as opposed to just raising capital and growing at a steady rate.
Well, interesting you're saying about, I could almost relate on some of the things. Of course, I understand the whole 4 walls with bricks, no bathrooms. Fortunately, I'm not going to go in a place without a bathroom. So there's certain standards I can't, right? You're going to draw the line right there. I tell you, when people ask me, why did you stay here? Why, you know, you could have really gone any place. And I remember back in the early days, so many of my friends really out went West Coast, and man, they need some serious money. And some of those guys some of them are, I'm sure, working with Google and some big companies, of course. And I remember in the early 90s or mid 90s, that my friends were out there, they were getting these amazing offers, you know, stock options, 3-year lease of a sports car, BMW. Like, wow, you could barely. I'm the guy who was actually making jokes to my friends that it's not going to car to drive, it's how you look stepping out of it. Because I didn't have a nice car, right? But here's my friends are getting these massive deals. Like, wow, why did I stay here? Right? I always wondered that. First of all, my family was here. But then I'd look back, and of course I just spent a significant amount of money on building a brand new headquarter building. You know, I bought an old building, I knocked it down, and it's downtown Schenectady. I spent a significant amount of money that people are thinking, why'd you do that? If you somehow, and by the way, Jack Welch, I don't know if you guys saw this on CNBC about a couple years ago. And every once in a while he was a guest more often than he is now. And he said that companies like GE, Apple, Microsoft are 18 to 20 months away from going bankrupt. Going bankrupt, right? Like, are you crazy? I mean, you're washed up. What are you doing? Just get off the TV, right? But then you start thinking about it. If a company like General Electric is less than 2 years away from going bankrupt, well, man, how about us? 3 months? 4 months? Maybe. So then you start realizing why you want to stay here. You know why? It's the cost of living. It's the operating cost. It's the bricks and mortars. They're less money than any place in this country. And you want to talk about talented people, they're right here. And we could get them, pay them what we pay out West Coast. I never say to someone, hey, we'll live in Albany, so therefore you got to reduce their people's pay 20%. No, you're wrong. Because that person could pick up and go out West Coast. But guess what? You want to talk about cost of living? You get a beautiful house in this area. And you know, we're complaining now to go from Schenectady to Troy. It took me almost 30 minutes. 30 minutes? Are you serious? How about taking an hour and a half? Go half the distance, right? Think about that. And so this is really the area that there's amazing talented people. The cost of living is so low that people are willing to stay here. And it's our jobs to attract college students saying, don't go to West Coast. Don't go to New York City. We all love New York City, but guess what? You're gonna have to live in that 4 brick walls for a long time. And what is your life, what's it worth? You're a smart person, you can make a lot of money, and now at this point, you can barely live. You can barely talk about having a family. You're never gonna have a nice car. And so this is really this area, people have to realize that cost of living, we've been very fortunate that cost of living is very low compared to other technology places in this country. We have a lot of smart people. The salaries, I never say be cheap on that or go low. Pay people like you're supposed to. because you are comparing with the West Coast and New York City. So pay those rates. But guess what? Those people are gonna stay with you. Like your story, that your fourth employee stayed with you because you're treating them, you're taking care of them. And this is really, I think it's a gem here. You know, you could get an amazing house. The food, think about it. Go another place. Go West Coast, really. Go buy milk. Or just lettuce. Man, think about this. This is real money. And you know, we talk about salary and wealth, right? It's how much money you keep in this pocket. You know, we talk about New York State, you know, we get taxed heavily. I get it. But think about other places and how much money you really keep in your pocket. This is significant. I think, you know, maybe it's taboo, nobody wants to talk about that, but this area is still very low cost of living. It really is, and that means we could attract people from all over the world. All over the world, come here, live in a beautiful area. Yeah, we get a little bit of snow. So what? You get to love it eventually. I actually hate it now, and I don't want to see it more. But really, I think, I don't want to keep dwelling on that, but I think we need to see that this area has so much to offer. We have the talented people. The real estate is very low compared to other technology hubs, and the living, of course.
That's good.
All right.
That's the Richard. Sorry, Richard.
What was the question? No, there was something about pivots. I will remark on the advantages of living in Albany. Certainly, you know, if you look at our company, there are a lot of people who have passed their 14-year mark for a 15-year-old company. We have people every couple of months that pass their 10-year mark. So it is one of those things where it's a great place to raise a family. Cost of living is low. You can buy a house. You're 3 hours from Montreal and Boston and New York City. Certainly, I like living here. I'm from Alabama originally, and I hate heat. I love the snow, so I'm very happy here. And one interesting thing is that we've had a lot of success in recruiting senior level talent from people who either are from here and went away somewhere and are happy to come back because they've either got friends or they've got family, or they went to school here and then they went away and worked. And when we say, hey, it's, you know, we're here, we're in the Capital District, and there's kind of an So there is like a whole, you know, group of people that have filtered through the Capital District over the last 20 years. And when you mention coming back here for a good job at some point, very often they're at the right point in their lives where this is very appealing to them. And I think that that's an advantage that in general we need to play up. To the point of pivoting, if you looked at our business plan from Commerce Hub back from 1998, it actually hasn't changed very much from what it is that we're doing now. The idea was to aggregate a lot of demand on the retailer side, aggregate a lot of supplier on the distributors and supplier side, and really in the middle become a marketplace. And that was somewhat cut short. We, myself and Frank Pora, the other founder of the company, we sold in 2006. We both left the company at that time, and the company continued to grow at a very impressive clip, was profitable every year while we were gone, but it wasn't doing anything new, and it really wasn't sort of fulfilling that original vision of being a marketplace. And in 2011, both Frank and I came back. We left the same day, we came back the same day, and now what we're doing is really putting the pieces together to be that real marketplace. So the idea that an online retailer can go, you know, to a single source and shop amongst thousands of suppliers, millions, tens of millions of products, and be able to source those out and put them on their website, you know, very quickly to make them available. And that really is the future of retailing. So not so much a pivot like you guys, as much as maybe a detour or maybe a lull, and then we sort of pick back up with the rhythm and continue the story.
I want to spend a little time on this concept of pivoting. And you all may come to find in the future that pivoting to me is what the life of the entrepreneur is all about. The recognition of an opportunity and the willingness to say, you know what I'm doing now is not working. I need to step back, take a look, and try again. And the idea of a startup is not really a company yet, right? Would you guys agree that a startup is these kind of temporary activities leading to a business? I.e., in other words, a market and a product that we can sell that we know that the customer wants. So I want to talk to you a little bit more, Matt, about how your company pivoted, because you've gone through a lot. And I think most of the entrepreneurs in the audience, people starting with an idea who have a concept, whether it's something that's being done in a laboratory, or they're working in a class, or they're doodling around in their garage, that, you know, how do you know what's an indication that it's time to pivot? Are there signs? Are there warnings in the marketplace, in your company's culture? What are the warning signs and signals that indicate that it's time to pivot?
Yeah, so I'll answer your question, and then I'll expand upon that. So there's a couple signs that it's time to pivot. One of them, obviously, as any business knows, whether you're a startup or you're a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, is if the market is just not there, it's time to pivot. It's time to open up a new line of business or abandon a line of business. So there's as business people, that's part of understanding the market that you're selling to is what I'm selling in fact what people are buying, or are they buying something else that's just a little bit different? So that's really, and then obviously the other thing is people coming to you and saying, if your product or service was just a little bit different, I'd be buying that. And so that's what I mean when I say pivot, and especially as a startup, you go into it kind of expecting to have to do that, and that's why you raise capital. There's really two pieces to raising capital. One is you have what you're going to do with that money, and then you have the resources you're going to need to do what you just said you were going to do with that money. That's why you raise capital, especially as a very early stage startup. I actually want to get back to one thing. I wanted to kind of piggyback on one of the previous answers, but I absolutely agree that we see the same thing. A lot of folks wanting to find a way back to this region after leaving to go explore other opportunities, wanting to find a way back. So senior management, I absolutely see the same thing. The one thing I will say, though, is that as startups in the area, or now established businesses that were once startups, we kind of have a responsibility to offer the folks that are entering the job market in this area something enticing enough that they would consider staying here. I think that benefits us, but it also just benefits the area in general. You see things like the economic impact it has on downtown Troy, for example, or Saratoga, and so keeping certain classes of people in the area when they have an opportunity to start something or have an opportunity to join something. I mean, Silicon Valley, everybody there is an entrepreneur. Even the people who are just employees at companies are entrepreneurs because they're entrepreneurs with their own careers. They're going through every 6 months and saying, I'm pretty sure that what I just signed up for is not going to succeed, but eventually I'm going to find that one that is going to make me a lot of money. I mean, they're being entrepreneurs with their own careers. Not saying that this region is necessarily set up for that type, but the types of companies that are sprouting up in the area have an opportunity to create enticing things. We a few months back there was a panel in Saratoga, and I was asked the question, were you ever pressured to move your company to Silicon Valley? The answer is yes, we were. We were actually asked to by some of our investors. There's those pressures to why are you in upstate New York, Albany, right? And we always kind of push back on that because we said, look, the cost of living is good here. We can keep headquarters here. We can open satellite offices wherever the markets are hot for us. That's no problem at all. So of course we do have a smaller office in New York City. We have an office on the West Coast, but our headquarters have always been here. And we just treat it like, frankly, we're a Silicon Valley startup. We have things like. The most enticing things are especially to people coming out of school and those types of people are things like they see what are the Facebook offices like, what are Google's offices like, what's life like for people who work at the Googleplex, and so we do things like we have a vacation policy. There's no vacation policy. If you want to take vacation and your work is done, then you talk to your manager and it'll probably happen. But there's no we want you to work 80 hours for 2 weeks straight because you have a vacation coming up. We kind of expect you to just work at a steady pace, and there's a level of personal management there. Those are the types of freedoms that those big companies like Google and Facebook and Twitter are offering to their employees. same type of thing. And I think on a smaller scale, this area is conducive to companies that operate that way.
That brings me to a point. Let's talk a little bit about culture, because culture is also a part of what the ecosystem is and becomes. So we have our own regional culture, right? But each of you has a separate culture in your company. So tell us a little about what your culture is like for your type of business. You've been around for a long time, you've been growing. What's your culture like at your company?
You know, my culture was what Pivot, as my own investor, it's hard for me to just say, today I'm going to pivot, because it's my own money. And so it's a little bit tough for me to say, things are not going well, let me just change my mind. Well, it's my own money. So therefore, I started from day one to not take investors. So I'm actually been using my own money, and really as the business has been growing, using the money that the company is creating to fund new ventures. So the problem with Pivot with me is that I didn't have the luxury to say, you know, something I'm just going to just try something new. Well, when it's your money, it's a little bit tough. So I didn't do the pivot. So I just want to mention about the pivot that I didn't go as much as these guys did, which obviously was very successful, these guys. But so therefore now you're talking about the culture. Well, that is a culture. So then really my employees realize that I really do set the tone. And I make this big deal about tone at the top. I mean, of course, I use the word Tony as tone at the top, right? But it really, I set the tone. And it's my job as the CEO, as the owner of the company, to set the tone. And guess what the tone is? Is that you got to listen to your customers. So there's really, and you know, there's Steve Jobs that talked about this really a few years ago in his book, but it's really been my fundamental from day one. Get clients. There's really this three-legged stool. And that's really how I create this culture. There's a three-legged stool. And I have a phenomenal customer service team that deals with customers every single day. Guess what? 1/3, so we're obviously a software company, 1/3 of your features functionality that's going to come out to your new product has to, again, 1/3 has to be what your clients want. 1/3, it's 33%. Of your features functionality have to be specifically what your clients want. The other third is you got your salespeople, right? They're saying, if you create this product, I'm going to sell you more. So therefore, 33% of your features functionality have to come from your salespeople. Guess what? They're out there. They're getting shot in the face and so forth, in the mud, getting beat up. Guess what? The salespeople are going to tell you, if you can only do this, I'm going to sell you more. So again, 33%. Then this is where the other part, which Steve Jobs really did a great job. The other 33% is really do something crazy. Do something that no one's asking for. And I can't even tell you how many times I've actually gone in front of my company and say, we're going to do this. And then I go, are you serious? This is where we're going to spend our time, but we're still going to do the client, what our clients are looking for. We're still going to do what your sales team is looking for, but we're doing this too. What? And I remember literally getting booed by our own clients saying, and now we're going to do this. Like, what? What are you going to do that for? And by the way, that's where the risk taken. But because I had to use my own money, I couldn't really just do 100% of that. I started to figure out, clients need this, so keep them happy, please. That's fundamental, right? If they're asking for this, your sales team, you have to listen to sales team. And you know what? The word entrepreneur, I have to say, gets overused. It gets overused. You know what I think in this part of the country we should call each other creators, inventors. To use the word entrepreneurs, what does that really mean? And I don't mean to knock it. These are very smart people, but using the word entrepreneur, what does that really mean? I want to see creators and inventors. That's what I want to see. So this is really the culture I create. And of course, as we hit new platform and new heights at the company, how do I motivate my employees to go to the next space, the next level? Think about this. The last Super Bowl, right? It's the 49ers against the Ravens, right? Everyone saw that, right? And the Ravens were beating up the 49ers, right? You guys remember the last Super Bowl? But then something happened. The lights went out. Do you remember that? So you think about it. If you're the coach, this is why I think about this all the time. I'm the coach. I'm the Raven coach. What do you tell your guys? Don't stretch. Just relax. Deep breath, right? Look, don't even move. Don't you pull any ligaments. Relax. Get in that zone, right? You can't scream. You just breathe. Now you're the 49ers coach. You're gonna go, are you serious? Remember when you were a little kid watching this with your dad? You were watching your dad, and one day you go, Dad, one day I'm gonna be on the Super Bowl. Well, tonight is that night, and you're messing it up. I'm sure you didn't use the word mess. I'm sure we use some other words, right? I'm like, are you serious? You're gonna blow it. And guys, the 49ers came this close to winning it. You know why? Because but it's hard. If you're the Ravens, what's the guy gonna say? Go out there and give the best? No. So when you're an underdog, it's always hard. It's always easier. Always. But the Ravens, or really, if you think about all these big teams in football that keep winning Super Bowls, well, what do those guys keep saying? Do the same thing they did last year? No. Guess what? You better give me 300% more. So you have to so a culture that, back to my culture, is that I expect a lot more from last year. A lot more. And there's some funny things I hear people saying. Pay B players, pay them to leave your company. Give them money to leave. That's a harsh thing to say, right? You're paying your B players to leave. That's a little bit harsh, but that means you want the best people all the time, and no one's going to be at that level that, these big quarterbacks, but everyone plays a role. But my culture is that, wow, we just hit this number, I can't believe we hit that number, and it happens every single year. And the meeting is, and of course, I make a show out of it, saying, all right, I bring people out to Proctor's or someplace spectacular. Guess what? When I put my new numbers, it's going to be huge. And it's a show. Because I can't just say, great job, we just grew 30% last year. Let's do it again. You can't do that. You have to make it, and you have to put your blood into that. And so as a culture, I want my employees to realize, holy cow. And if any one of you have actually had an opportunity to come down Schenectady, my new headquarters, I hope you realize, wow, I think I'm in Google. We have a rooftop terrace that overlooks the entire city. It's an experience. So a culture it's all what I live by.
Okay, awesome. So culture is important. Very important. Very important.
I think it's a yes.
Culture is important.
I think it's a yes.
Richard, please.
It's a yes.
Yeah, there's actually been quite an interesting story to the cultural arc at Commerce Hub over the years. In the beginning, very startup oriented, very rough and tumble, run by two guys who did not have a lot of experience in management, managing people, dealing with people. There was probably some collateral damage along the way. As we grew up, as we got, large retail customers, these are, you're talking about companies like Sears that are 100-year-old institutions that when they do a project, they want a lot of documentation and they want a lot of process and they want a very somber project manager associated with it. So we developed a lot of those things. Externally at first, but then I think over time we started to internalize them to the point where we became ourselves very bureaucratic and very moribund, and it became one of those things, and I'm sure those of you who are with companies of a certain sort of maturity recognize this. If something goes wrong and your response is to add on another layer of process. And after a few years of this, you find yourself with a lot of process and a lot of formalism and not a lot of ability to innovate or to respond in a very original or creative way to things. And in 2011, when we came back, we set up a separate office in Clifton Park away from our main office in Albany. And the sole purpose was to develop new products there away from the core business of Commerce Hub because, there was a real business to run there, and that was not a ship that we could just go and upset. And we developed a new culture of innovation. It was sort of like a lab up in Clifton Park where we developed some new products, brought some people up, hired some new people, experimented with some things. Some things worked, some things didn't. And now, a couple of years later, we fused that back into the main culture and really inculcated what was a bureaucratic culture with a new breath of a startup kind of mentality, and to the point where, you know, not only at the technology layer, but also at the organizational layer, and the way the way people think about doing their jobs is around, you know, smaller, independent, self-sufficient groups where there's empowerment pushed down to lower levels. People are allowed to make mistakes. They're not whacked on the head for doing that. And that we realize that that's the only way that we're going to scale. And this came from looking at companies like Amazon and Netflix, and, you know, where they have this big monolithic technology, they have these big monolithic organizations, and the only way they were able to push them back past a certain scale was to break them up. Break up the technology into a services-oriented kind of thing, break up the teams and the organizations into these self-sufficient entities. And we're sort of going through that now at Commerce Hub, and it's frankly, you know, the most exciting period of my career. I really can't say anything more than that.
Well, I've been advised that we're out of time. I want to say thank you. But I do want to give you guys 15 seconds each, 15 seconds to give the audience a takeaway, right? Covered a lot of ground here today, but I'm going to give you 10 seconds to think about it. Well, you can say it in 15, but I'll give you 10 seconds. Or somebody count down to 10. To think of something that if you were sitting in the audience and you're an aspiring entrepreneur, or you're a person who started a company and you're having challenges and you're feeling discouraged, you're trying to raise capital, you can't get any capital, you know, your idea turns out that it doesn't work out the way you want it to, or the customers aren't interested, whatever's critical in your experience, what was a moment that happened, occurred to you, that you want to share, that you can give to someone that will help them kind of help their journey? Just think of something. So, Tom?
I'm going to just say one thing from my son watched the Nemo, right? It's keep swimming. Just keep trying. Get up and do it again. Just do it again.
We pitched Apprenda to over 60 venture capitalists to raise our first round of funding, and they were from all over the country. And our first round of funding came from High Peaks Venture Partners, which is 2 blocks from here. So this environment, this area, this sort of stuff can't happen, and there are startups in this area that are literally changing the world, changing the way that companies do business.
Early on, we went to the mall to put buy some inspirational posters and put them up on the walls around the office. And I had one in my office of a guy hanging off of a cliff. He was like an extreme rock climber, because that's really how I felt every day. Like, I felt like if QVC, got mad at us today, it was over. If this happened, it was over. And I literally felt that way every day. That poster is still in our office over in the finance division, and every now and then I go and look at it just to remind myself that I'm not there, but I still need to keep that feeling in my gut, And the other thing I'll say is, if you come to work for Commerce Hub, all of your wildest dreams will come true.
Thanks, Sheldon.
Just like to thank our panelists and James. I think that was a great discussion. Do we have David in the room? Yes. David? So we have the aspiring entrepreneurs, we got the successful entrepreneurs. We heard a lot of the ways that they could be successful in the Tech Valley, and this was really everything I could hope for. So we've got a student in the back, Brandon, who's going to run the presentation, and we'll hand this over to Dave.
Alrighty. Oh, read on. Alrighty, we'll just have to see the rest. Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Brickman. I'm a lawyer in Albany, and I spent the first, 20 years of my career very aggravated. I built a company to make the aggravation go away. One of the hardest things that lawyers have to deal with all day, every day, is putting together documents and forms and trying to do them without making mistakes. And what lawyers do all day, every day, I hope there's no lawyers in the room, but I'll throw you under the bus now. That's what they do. They make mistakes, and they get aggravated when they make mistakes. And over the years, I started out, can we have the next slide? So I built this company to try and alleviate the problem. This is Rocket Docket. It's my definition of a rocket dock, if there really is such a thing. And then I built the software. If we could have the next slide. I built the software to basically solve the lawyer's problem in terms of keeping up. And in connection with keeping up, if we could have the next slide, that's what I started with. I actually broke my photocopier with that. And what happened was, I started in 1988. I had a secretary, and I had a typewriter, and I had a yellow pad, similar to that, and it was very difficult to get work done. So it was in 1992, I think I got my first computer, and I started to try and understand how they worked. And the software, the computers worked well enough, but the software itself didn't. This is a page from the program that I developed, and what I ended up doing was developing a database program that was very complicated behind the scenes, because what it does is it collects all of the information that a law office could ever collect about itself and its clients, and then there's forms that go along with the forms, with the software, and what happens is the forms are all selected with a mouse, so it's all very easy to do from a touchpad with your finger. And if I could have the next slide. It has a document preview inside, so you can check your work as you go. And basically, like if I had to do like a sequence of documents from cover letters, letters to other lawyers, affidavits of serving those letters, summons, a complaint, a notice of appearance, on and on. I could do 8, 10, 12 forms in just a couple minutes after the basic case information has been entered. I would enter the contacts, enter the name of the court into the database, and then if I could have the next, and then basically once the simple information is entered, which is the contacts, then everything else is just clicking into the system, and you tell it what you want on the main page. And then if I could have the next slide. This is back to the document preview. This is a video. If we could just play this. I don't know if we have sound, but I can narrate if we do. The forms start out red. That's the computation that's looking for the information. All the information comes from the database. And is that video going, or? All right. Oh, there we go. So what's going to happen is you'll see way up top, you'll see where the seller information is. The seller will get selected from a very simple interview. There's the database. So you select out your seller and puts it into the sequence. And then from there, I don't know if you can see it, but basically you tell the system what gender the party is, and then you get to select their role. In this case, it's a seller in a real estate transaction, and you can see it's going faster than I can talk. And it just put all the information in there. And now if there was 10 sellers, it would be about that fast to add every one of them. There would not be any gathering, copying, cutting, and pasting, no aggravating errors as you go. It'll create the signature lines, the notary blocks, and this is basically like a real deed. And they're difficult to cut and paste together, and they're very easy to do with this system. So at the end of the day, and I'm not kidding, I basically have eliminated all the aggravation out of my own life, and I can get my day job done in 15, 20 minutes a day, and I'm as busy as anybody else out there. And now what I really want to do is I want to put together a company. I want to put together a team of people. There's things that I can do. I can build this software and I can program. I have no skills or no idea how to market. I have no idea how to do things like make my website do certain things. For example, make it, it can take an annual subscription payment, but it can't take a monthly. There's so many different things that I just don't know how to do. And the whole idea of this group is just, it's kind of fascinating to me, because it seems like it's possible. It seems like there's some hope. I spent 5 years all alone with this, and I'm ready to let it out.
Thanks, David. We have one last individual, and then we'll let you out on time. Just be respectful of your time as well. We have Raymond.
All right. Should I just stand here for a second? Hey, I'm going to keep this brief because I know this was long, but I'm Raymond Jacobson. I'm a sophomore at RPI, and this is Ethan Bond, who's also a sophomore. So last spring, we were introduced to this event called Hack Upstate, and it was introduced to us by the Severino Center, as well as like some of the computer science organizations around campus. And it's this event, it's a hackathon that's run biannually, so twice a year in the fall and the spring, by two guys, Doug Rosensky and Mitch Patterson. And it's truly a different type of hackathon than a lot of the other ones that I've been to before. And the idea behind it is it's made to facilitate and to grow the technological center in this region of the world. And previously, last spring was the first one, and this fall was the second one, and both of them were held in Syracuse. And so we've been given the amazing opportunity of actually bringing it to the Capital Region in the spring. So we are hosting Hack Upstate in the Capital Region, probably early April next year. And we're starting, by spreading the word right now to keep people in the loop where we are, and we're also looking for sponsors. And if you're not familiar with how hackathons are organized and how they run, it's an amazing opportunity to get the name of your company out, to meet amazing programmers, amazing marketing people, amazing design people, and bringing that all together. And the fundamental mission behind this thing is to really just unite and facilitate. And there's flyers on all the tables. My contact information is there if you're interested in sponsoring it. We're going to allow sponsors to give presentations and talks, and obviously if you have an API that developers could use, you can feel free to offer prizes for that. If you're interested, definitely send me a message, talk to me after this, I'll be around. Do you have anything to add to that? Okay, sorry. Thank you.
So hearing the great inspirational messages from leaders of the community, hearing aspiring entrepreneurs and organized events like this, I mean, this is the types of things we want to do with Startup Tech Valley. So thanks again for coming. We are still looking for sponsors. Antonio has offered to sponsor, and we're glad to have that. So a round of applause if he's still here. Right here. Very good. Thank you. And look forward to the next event. James didn't actually get to talk about it, but we won't have a December event because of the Boss 518 event. It's I think 60 speakers. Is James still here if he wants to talk about it? December 5th. We'll have a post and an email that will help to promote this event for James as well. I see him coming up, so I'm going to let him speak about it.
All right, so on December 5th, we have organized an event unlike anything you've ever seen or participated in. And that's not an exaggeration. Because I know for a fact there's not ever been an event like this in the Capital Region, probably anywhere in the country, perhaps the world. We're bringing together right now, we have 81 registered speakers, CEOs. We have some publicly traded companies, mid-market companies, startups. We've got academic leaders. And each one is going to speak for only 5 minutes on a very, very specific subject within the continuum of activities and topics along the entrepreneurial ecosystem. From the start of creating, how do you create a good culture for innovation and entrepreneurship, through the issues of starting up a company, where does good technology and discovery and ideas come from, what's invention, through the issues you face when you're trying to raise capital, for going all the way to once you've raised capital and you started a business, how do you optimize growth and manage resources, to finally reaching the seventh stage we call the stage of prosperity, where you're successful, you had an exit event, and you're going to come back and you're going to give as an investor or as a mentor or as a coach to your community. So we've identified the range of activities from create the culture all the way through to successful exit. And we have experts who have been chosen because of their experience, who are going to speak from their experience and their passion about these different topics. So if you can imagine one stage, where you're going to have 81 people who are leaders in their fields speaking on something that they're passionate about. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't imagine being in an arrangement, the audience in that conversation, and not getting one thing, one idea that could transform my business or my life. So I would recommend, hopefully, to see all of you there. You can go to the website. It's at boss518.com. All the information about the events, all the speakers, you can see their pictures, you can read their profiles. We have the detailed agenda of topics so that you can see the things that you might be interested in. But I encourage everyone who's interested in entrepreneurship, innovation, who wants to be a part of changing the world, to be a part of this event. I hope to see you all there. All right, thank you.
That's it.